right, House Committee on Elections will now come to order, and clerk, please call the roll.
Chair Lavenberg.
Here.
Vice Chair Israel.
Here.
Representative Anderson.
Here.
Representative Fallon.
Here.
Chair Larson. Representative Reynolds.
Present.
Representative Swanson.
Here. Okay, quorum is present, and we're going to hear 3 bills today. And if anyone wishes to testify on any of the bills, sign up with the clerk down here. And if you do that now, we can move it along, and everybody can be out by dinner time. And so we won't have to wait on anyone. So, yes, absolutely. Or, you know, to go enjoy the last of the daylight for this summer. All right, so having said that, Chair lays out House Bill 110 and recognizes Chairman Murphy to explain the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Members, we appreciate the opportunity to lay this bill out to you. This will sound perhaps familiar to you as you heard this bill in the regular session. And I thank you for your support. You voted out of this committee unanimously. And so just to kind of remind you of what this bill does, I'm going to kind of go through the details because I can't remember what some of my own bills do, much less the ones I've heard in committee. So this bill was House 3335 in the general session. It requires political subdivisions to follow certain disclosure and posting requirements when seeking new voter approval of debt. So we call this truth in debt, is what this is about. So it ensures that bond proposals are uniform and transparent for taxpayers by having these requirements followed. So any ballot seeking voter approval will be required to give a general description of what the funds will be used for and the total principal being authorized. A subdivision with more than 250 registered voters must include on the ballot the estimated maximum tax increase on a $100,000 homestead to pay the proposed debt. This gives voters an illustration of the bond impact. Additionally, and y'all may recall this, subdivisions must prepare a voter information document, which is separate from the ballot, which includes ballot language and the estimated combined principal and interest to repay new and outstanding debt obligations. This information shall be posted on their website, if they have one, at least 21 days prior to the election. So the idea, members, is we want to know not just what the new debt is, but what's the existing debt. You know, moving to new subdivision, they've already authorized a bunch of bonds. You didn't know? Well, we want you to know. Let's see. Any political subdivision maintaining a website must post information on ballot language and payoff information for new and existing debt obligations, regardless of size. So if they have a website, they have to post this information. They also have to post if they're going to do the certificates of obligations. Members, you've heard concerns about those. They must post information on that. And so the idea is to make sure the taxpayers are adequately informed when they head to the voting booth. So all this stuff is prior to getting into the voting booth. We worked with a number of stakeholders in this bill in the general, and I think we've got a very good balancing act here. And I know we have some witnesses, Madam Chair. I'd be pleased to answer your questions or come back to close in a moment.
Okay, members, any questions? Valerie, Rep. Swanson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I love your bill, Representative Murphy.
Thank you.
I would love it even more if you instructed them they must have a website and do all this.
That was one of the compromise we had, Representative Swanson, was some of the itty-bitty ones just don't have. And my attitude is every 11-year-old has a Facebook page, you know, and so they could do that. But we decided not to go there. I think that will come in time, though.
Okay. You know, I live in a town of less than, I don't know, about 4,000 people, and that's if we're counting the horses and chickens, and they have a website. So yeah. I think they
we're just saying if you have one, then you have to do certain things. We're not going to make you go get one.
Know.
Even though I think, members, that day is coming, we are going to tell people
I think most of them
they have a presence.
Do.
Yeah.
All right. Rep. Fallon?
Yeah, just to share with Representative Swanson, we passed a bill last session that if you're a city of 50,000, we did. I think it was 50,000 that they had to post their regular scheduled meetings. They had to film them and put them online, record them, I should say, and put them online. So that at least compelled them. If you're a city of 50,000, if you're a school district with 10,000 or more, or a county of 125,000 or more, they have to not only have a website because they need to post their meetings online. And so that'll cover a lot of the cities, not all.
Absolutely, Pat. Yeah, I think most people are out there already, and I think it's just a matter of time. You figure how much mileage we get out of the information we put on the web, it's tremendous.
If you're a home rule city and you don't have a website, there's just no excuse for that now, and not in 2017.
Exactly.
So maybe a good bill for Representative Swanson to file next session.
You can be the internet lady. All right,
Okay.
members, I'll come back to close.
All
All
right.
right, thank you.
Chair calls up Alan Vera. Be sure and state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
Alan Vera, Chairman, Harris County Republican Party Ballot Security Committee, testifying in support of HB 110. Shortly after the governor announced the special session, I was dispatched here to Austin for a brainstorming session on election legislation for special session. At one point, they asked me what, in my opinion, was the most blatant and recurring form of election fraud in Texas. Without hesitation, I said it was every single bond election I've ever witnessed. I qualified my comment by stating while not all bond elections violate the letter of the law, they almost always trample on the spirit of the law. For the last two regular sessions, this committee and your counterparts in the Senate have tried to bring better order to the wild, wild west of bond elections and the hordes of snake oil salespersons that populate that arena. This bill specifically and precisely addresses at least one of the recurring abuses of bond elections across Texas. The information currently provided on bond issues always paints the rosiest picture possible. Expensive graphics laced with heaping portions of guilt try to sell voters on the bond on an emotional basis, but the information doesn't present the economic and financial facts the voters need to make a rational decision.
Excuse me, Alan, I'm going to recognize Chair Larson as present.
Of course.
Okay.
The information currently presented doesn't tell voters the impact the bond will have on their property taxes, doesn't provide the voters with relevant information that would allow them to make judgments about whether this investment will generate a good return. Voters deserve as much financial information on a debt obligation election as investors demand on an investment prospectus, or at least as much as consumers get on a credit card statement. It's really that simple. This bill directly and thoroughly addresses this very serious information gap in Texas bond elections today. It deserves a hearing in the full House. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, members? All right, Chair calls up Adam Kahn. Okay.
Hi, my name's Adam Kahn. I blog at the website Conman's Musings. I'm testifying in favor.
Are you representing yourself?
Yeah.
Who do you represent?
I just put down as the blogger and representing the blog. So Conman's Musings.
Okay.
That's how I signed up. That's how
Okay.
I've signed up for every bill in the special session.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah,
And your position is in favor?
For the bill,
Okay.
yes. Local government debt is one of two things that I see as gathering macroeconomic storms for the entire economy of the state of Texas. It's one of two things that really frightens me. The other one is the property tax system, which is obviously being dealt with elsewhere during the special session. So Texas has the second highest local government debt per capita in the country, behind only New York. I'm sure you're all familiar with that. It's been going on for several years now, and anything that could give voters more information about what they're actually getting themselves into on a bond package would be extremely helpful. I will say, to echo the gentleman who testified right before me, having been someone who has worked on, fought many bond campaigns over the years. I think this fall in Travis County is probably going to mark 5 years in a row that it's going to have to be done. This is the type of information where you're requiring them to post the maximum tax increase that they could be done. That is extremely useful information to have during a campaign. This is something that voters will pay attention to, they will listen to, and it will make them think twice before pushing yes on that button. So thank you for considering the bill, and we'll see what happens.
Thank you. Any questions, members? Okay, thank you. Chair calls up Brian Matthew.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, my name is Brian Matthew. I'm a policy analyst with the Center for Local Governance at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, here to testify in support of House Bill 110. I know you guys are very familiar with this bill, so I'll keep my remarks brief. We support this bill because it empowers voters with more information and thereby enables them to exert more control over rising local debt. The Bond Review Board estimates that local debt service outstanding, or total principal plus interest owed stands at $342.1 billion, or basically $12,500 owed by every Texan. What's concerning is that this large local debt is also growing very rapidly. So when you look at the numbers from 2000 to 2016, local debt outstanding increased 170%, and over that same time period, population and inflation grew by only 72%. So this bill tackles our concern over high and fast-growing debt by providing more information to voters as to the tax impact to them of taking on more debt. That's one reason we particularly like this bill. And I want to highlight Section 1251.052B, which states that ballots for voter-approved debt by a political subdivision with at least 250 registered voters must state the estimated maximum annual increase in taxes on a homestead appraised at a value of $100,000. And we just like this because we think it empowers voters to see what the implication would be if they vote to finance the building of a park, for example, with some debt. And they get to make that trade-off, and they get to make that decision. So it's this kind of information that will help Texans make the right financial decisions for themselves and their communities, and this is why we support the bill. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions, members? Thank you, Brian. All right, Chair calls up Trey Laurie.
Good afternoon, Trey Larry with Allen Boone Humphreys Robinson in Austin and in Houston, and I'm here today to testify in favor of and support House Bill 110, maybe for slightly different reasons than the people before me. I think this is a great bill. It is a compromise bill, and it's a bill that Chairman Murphy has worked with stakeholders on for several years now. I don't believe that bonds are bad. I believe that bonds are necessary to pay for the infrastructure for our state: water, sewer, drainage, roads, parks, schools. And we have had overwhelming, prosperous growth and people moving to our state and needing infrastructure. And as a state, we turn to local governments to issue the debt for that infrastructure. We don't issue a lot of debt at the state level for infrastructure. That's one reason why when you compare our state to other states as far as local debt versus state debt, why the numbers are so far off. Because so many other states have so much more state debt. We have a constitution that pushes that responsibility down to the local governments to issue debt for those bonds. But I believe that people who are going to an election to vote for bonds need to have the best, most accurate information before them. Not because I think they're all going to suddenly start voting no, but because I think they need to have that information before them. And that's exactly what this bill does or would do. It's the same as you had in the regular session, and you passed it, and I supported it then, and I support it now. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, members? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have Keith Ingram with the Secretary of State, if y'all have any questions. And you get a pass on this one, Keith. So is there anyone who wishes to testify for, against, or on House Bill 110? Seeing none, Chair calls up Chair Murphy to close.
Thank you, Madam Chair, committee members. I encourage you to, again, vote this bill out, and hopefully sooner rather than later, just because with just a couple weeks left, we've got to move our stuff along. And really appreciate y'all listening and having the hearing. And with that, I close.
Okay, thank you. And with that, the chair will leave House Bill 110 pending at this time. Okay, which one of you, do y'all have witnesses that you want to? Ladies first, okay. All right, the chair lays out House Bill 341 and recognizes Vice Chair Israel to explain the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members, for your time today.
Oh, you have a sub?
Yes, Madam
okay.
Chair, if you'll lay out our substitute,
Yeah,
we have a
so Chair
minor
lays out
adjustment.
the sub and, again, recognizes Vice Chair to explain that.
Thank you. When we recognized that we were going to be in special session and that vote by mail fraud in particular was going to be on our agenda during this special session, my staff worked with several other offices to put together a bill that takes a different approach than what we heard on Friday. On Friday, we heard that if we raise the penalties, we might see positive results in catching those bad actors who are being fraudulent. What we have yet to address in a significant way is that there are mechanical administrative changes that we can make to the application, the carrier envelope in particular, that will help our elections administrators and help our voters with clarity. So House Bill 341 is a compilation of best practices from around the country and 2 or 3 good bills that simply just didn't make it far enough in the last couple of sessions. This legislation calls for a restructuring of our vote-by-mail processes to reduce mail ballot fraud. House Bill 341 will actually stop mail ballot fraud before it happens. This bill addresses mail ballot fraud by taking steps to eliminate ballot chasing, by allowing voters to automatically renew their ballot by mail on the back of the carrier envelope when they vote. The thought being that if they if they check off the box and say, I like to vote by mail and I want to continue to vote by mail, it's less likely that someone is going to track them down, and not track them down, but track down knowing that the application went in, and then knowing when the county is sending out the actual ballot. So it's reducing the opportunity for a susceptible voter, more than likely a senior voter, to be approached at the door and coerced. This bill also prevents fraud by requiring the Office of the Secretary of State to work with, quote, plain language experts. I can't believe we have to put that into legislation, but I've seen that might be helpful to the Secretary of State as they're working with our elections administrators around the state to set guidelines to simplify the ballot and the ballot instructions. This will reduce the need for voters' assistance. The bill also prevents fraud by redesigning the ballot envelope, the carrier envelope, and instructions using the best practices from counties across Texas. This will allow more ballots to be counted and again reduce the need for voter assistance. We also prevent fraud by allowing election officials to contact voters via email or phone or letter to correct minor mistakes on the vote-by-mail applications, giving our officials another tool to catch discrepancies and run honest and fair elections. Due to the enhanced penalties being considered now and the ones passed during the 85th session, which have yet to be implemented, this bill clarifies that a voter is entitled to assistance under the federal and state law if a voter wishes to receive it. Good policy begins with those on the front lines, the elections administrators and county clerks. And some parts of this legislation are the result of a survey my office conducted in the top 100 most populous counties in Texas. More than 75 counties responded to our survey. So again, this is a compilation of what was identified as administrative adjustments that could be helpful to all of us. With that, Madam Chair, I'll close and see if there's any witnesses.
Okay, anybody have any comments, questions? Representative Reynolds.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to commend our Vice Chair for her hard work and her diligence that her staff did. I know during the short period of the interim that we had, she and her staff led other stakeholders to work on, I guess, a good compromise bill. And I know that she put a lot of time and effort into it, and I just wanted to just publicly commend her for working on it in a short period of time to get us a good bill.
Thanks.
Okay. Chair calls up Glenn Maxey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Glenn Maxey, Texas Democratic Party, here in support of House Bill 341. I'll be very brief. I'll just say that, number one, in this bill, we fixed the carrier envelope. I can't say anything other than the carrier envelope is a hot mess. It is difficult for seniors to understand and read. It's in .3 type because ballot instructions and the laws are all there. Moving that to a separate piece of paper, leaving just the signature and witness stuff on the envelope so people actually see it. When a county like Bowie County had 3,000 mail ballots and over 100 people, ballots were rejected because they simply didn't sign the carrier envelope, there's something wrong with the carrier envelope, not with the voters. It needs to be simplified. And secondly, Ms. Israel is correct. If you want to stop voter fraud, take this application process for those people who vote in every election out of the hands of people going door to door or parties sending something to them where they have to renew this. Make it a process, part of the county's process of when the voter votes, allowing them to renew for the next cycle, and make that an official government action, and we'll stop a lot of fraud. I don't know people who commit voter fraud door to door. I hear stories, and I know that Ms. Israel is totally correct. If you go in the neighborhood, you collect the applications, you turn the applications in all at the same time, then you know about when the county is going to mail those ballots back out, and you can go back and follow the mail carrier when the ballots hit, and then talk to the people at the door. We can stop that by having people's ballots renewed through a governmental process and not with volunteers at the door. And with that, if there's any questions.
All right, there's any questions? Okay, thank you. All right, Chair calls up Yanis Banks.
All right, good afternoon. Giannis Banks, Texas NAACP. And we are, we're in favor of the bill. The reason why we like it, I think, is what we talked about last week. I wasn't happy with just enhancing the penalties without trying to stop the problem at the front end. And I see this trying to stop the problem at the front end to really reduce mail-in voter fraud by looking at what our counties at the local level are doing and taking their best practices. And I think it's something we should look at and see what's working here, what's working there. Let's put it all together so statewide we can be having what's working, that's making sense, and cut back on the issue. And so with that, we support the bill.
Okay, any questions, members? Thank you. Good job. All right, Chair calls up Alan Vera.
Alan Vera, Chairman, Harris County Republican Party Ballot Security Committee, testifying against the bill. While SB 5 and HB 184 use very specific language to define what the voter's assistant can and cannot do, this bill takes it back to a broad definition on page 1. We're concerned that it works against 5 and 184 by making the voter assistance available even more broad than it is. Secondly, we're working very hard to try to reduce the submission of false and misleading information on a mail ballot application. But pages 3 and 4 of this bill allow email modifications to the information already submitted. No signatures, no specified verification, no due diligence at any level. Just change important information on the ballot application via email. And making it worse, an email that just came in on the application in the first place. No way for the county clerk or election administrator to verify it. We don't like that. And finally, we're already struggling to make sure that one-year mail ballot applications are not further enabling ballot fraud. But at the bottom of page 4 and 7 through 9 set up a scenario for applications lasting up to 2 years. It's nice, clever wording that implements a 2-year mail ballot application, and we don't think that's a good idea. This bill countermands many of the spirit of many of the other mail ballot improvements we made in the regular session, and we're trying to make in special session. So we urge that 341 die here in this committee. Thank you.
Members, are there any questions? All right. Thanks, Alan. All right. Does anybody have any questions for the Secretary of State? Keith, seeing none. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify for, against, and didn't register with the clerk?
I registered as...
Register, if you want to change it.
I did register, but not to testify, but can I change that just to?
Tell the clerk.
Do you need to re-register? As long as you come up and you can let me know.
I mean, I
just go up and just introduce yourself.
Okay.
Jeff Miller, Disability Rights Texas, and thank you for letting me do this at the last minute.
And
I just wanted to.
You're representing the disability.
I represent Disability Rights Texas, and we are in favor of the bill.
Okay.
And I just wanted to make a comment, and first of all, thank Representative Israel for bringing this bill. And as far as assistance for people that are over 65 or people with disabilities, we believe that the language that Representative Israel has in the bill is much closer to the original intent of the Federal Voting Rights Act that actually says if someone needs assistance, they can get assistance, and it doesn't actually qualify it and doesn't say it has to be a certain kind or a certain way. And so we believe that the Voting Rights Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act allow voters with disabilities reasonable accommodations in whatever way that they need to actually access the polling process and the voting process based on their disability. And that's what federal courts around the country, the way it's been interpreted. So we actually believe the language is much closer with the language in the bill as it's being proposed. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions? All right. Now, is there anyone else who wishes to testify for, against, or on House Bill 341? And seeing none, Chair recognizes Vice Chair to close. Israel to close.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to my colleagues for the time that we've all put into this. The carrier envelope is in such tiny type that I think of people like my 91-year-old mother in El Paso who would benefit from having reasonableness in type size, reasonableness in design, and clarity in expectations of a voter who would like to take advantage of voting by mail. There's minor things in the bill that I think are worthy of our consideration. For example, there's a box on the envelope and you have to sign across the flap, of course, theoretically to secure it. This would say that if someone, my mom's hand's getting a little shakier now, there's people who with disabilities who don't have perfect penmanship, and if the Celia Israel, the L nicks the outside corner, then that would not be a reason to say this isn't a valid ballot. So I think there's reasonable and small improvements that can be done. Our EAs and clerks told us that that this was one big problem, and if we can do this as a body and demonstrate that we hear you and we want to make the administrative improvements to make this system a better one. Other states, I think Washington comes to mind, they don't have in-person voting. They vote entirely by mail. I think that we can learn from other states and other areas, and thank you for your time, and with that I close.
Okay, and with that, the chair will withdraw to substitute to House Bill 341 and leave House Bill 341 pending at this time. Thank you. All right, chair lays out House Bill 342, recognizes Representative Reynolds to explain the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. As we all know, cybersecurity is a real threat. House Bill 342 will strengthen a study regarding cybersecurity for voting machines that was passed during the regular session in House Bill 8 by Representative Capriglione. That bill requires the Secretary of State to assess cybersecurity threats on Texas voting machines. This bill is necessary due to the confirmed cybersecurity election threat from Russian hackers in Dallas County since the passage of House Bill 8. House Bill 342 adds the administration of voting by mail to the study. The mail-in ballot scammer is on the same software as the InterCivic eSlate voting machine, so an attacker only needs to infect one device and the infection can spread to every machine in the country. The bill will provide explicit expert resources for the Secretary of State to consult in writing the report. It moves up the report due date to September 1st, 2018, so that changes can be made before the next general election and not after. In addition, House Bill 342 makes findings of the report available to all legislators to require more transparency, and it requires counties to report cyber attacks within 48 hours of the incident. This bill will help counties that are working hard to counter cybersecurity threats. This is especially critical in many of the large jurisdictions, including Harris County, where 1 in 7 registered voters in Texas reside. At this time, I'll reserve the right to close unless there are any questions.
Okay. And folks, there's some folks that just walked in. We now on House Bill 342, dealing with cybersecurity on election equipment. So if there's anyone who wishes to testify that has not signed up, now is the time to do it. All right, having said that, Chair calls up Megan Scoggins.
Thank you, Chairwoman and the committee. My name is Megan Scoggins. I am representing myself, not anybody in particular. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about a personal experience
And
that
your position on the bill.
I am for the bill.
Okay.
I just want to tell a little bit about my personal experience and why this bill is so important. On October 27th of 2016, my husband and I went to go vote. It's kind of a little thing that we do together, and then we go to lunch. So I went through my eSlate machine and selected my candidates, hit the next button, and the review screen came up. And I noticed that one of my votes had been changed. And I thought, I didn't think anything of it. I thought I must have maybe hit a button or something. I went back and I fixed it, reviewed it again. My votes were exactly what I wanted them to be, so I hit submit. Go out, I'm waiting for my husband. We walk out the door and I kind of told him what happened. I said, it was just kind of weird. I've never had that happen before. And he goes, the same thing happened to me. I went, okay. So we went back in and went ahead and talked to the poll workers there. And one of the poll workers kind of rolled his eyes like, somebody else. And the other poll worker was like, well, you know, you probably just pushed the button wrong. So we left and kind of just blew it off that, hey, maybe we accidentally pushed a button. We were able to fix our votes. Started talking with several of our neighbors and found out that 19 people, including my husband and myself, had that exact same experience at that polling location in Fort Penn County for the early voting for the 2016 election. Ladies and gentlemen, there is nothing that is preventing any sort of security in our voting machines. Personally, after talking to people, I think that those two machines just happen to maybe have something wonky going on with them. I didn't hear anything else from anybody else, but that was two machines in one polling location. 19 people that noticed that their vote was changed. And that's exactly why we need cybersecurity for our voting. Thank you.
Any questions, members? Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Chair calls up Yanis Banks.
Outside of my district, she's in. Yeah,
All right, Giannis Banks, Texas NAACP. We are supporting the bill. And even just recently, there was a DEF CON security conference. I don't know if y'all saw the story that came out where it's normally a bunch of hackers. They show up there to try to see what they can do and what they can't do. And for the first time ever, they was interested to see if they can hack U.S. voting machines. They did it in under 2 hours. With no problem. This is using Wi-Fi, and some of them had screwdrivers. Of course, that would be obvious if somebody took a screwdriver out.
Okay, you know our machines are not connected to the internet.
Right. They're not connected to the internet, but they still were able to hack the machines using Wi-Fi or the Bluetooth from their phones or what have you. So they're still able to hack it without using a screwdriver. This is the wireless way of them hacking the machines. And the machines that they did include were Diabo, Sequoia, and Winbow. And so they did this little experiment to see if it's possible, and they were able to do it. I think so. I think strengthening the study to say, well, we're doing the study already. Let's strengthen it. Let's make sure stuff are secure, or just secure, I should say, and that our votes, our elections aren't being hacked or messed with. It's very important. And I think this is the first time when you had a community of hackers take that interest into this issue and show that, yeah, if we want to, or if it's wanted to, it doesn't take very long. And like Representative Reynolds said, you hack one, they were able to impact all the rest just by going through one. So it can be a problem. It is a problem, and we need to make sure that if something is going on, that we have the right information and are protected and be proactive instead of reactive.
Okay. Any questions, members? All right. Thank you. Thanks, Janice. All right. Chair calls up Alan Vera.
Alan Vera, Chairman, Harris County Republican Party Ballot Security Committee, testifying on HB 342. The issue of whether or not the Office of Secretary of State should commit taxpayer money and staff resources to study cybersecurity of Texas voting systems is above my pay grade. But the issue of what study design will yield some results is right in my wheelhouse. decades of experience doing studies for business and civic organizations leads me to be able to say that there's two extremes to the spectrum of what you get from a study. You can get studies which generate generic results which are nice to know and attention-getting at best. Or you can get studies which generate specific actionable results, detailed recommendations, and a clear path forward. As proposed in the bill, I believe we'd get number one, not the second. What I would suggest, and now Representative Reynolds, I'm going to go off the reservation, okay? And afterward, if you want to ask me how we could do it cheaply, I'll tell you. I believe we should test our systems, but I believe it should be a real test. I believe the Secretary of State should select combinations of hardware, software, and network designs that represent systems across Texas. Then I think people who are professionals in the business should be sent to hack them. I think they should be able to give a report card on each system. Number one, did we hack it? Number two, score the security of the system based on how hard it was to hack. 3, make recommendations for how to improve it. And 4, tell us what the security improvement would be if the recommendations were followed. I think if we do that in a quantitative fashion, work by hands-on people that are actually engaged in this would be more helpful than the collective opinions of county clerks and elections administrators who might bump into cybersecurity issues occasionally. If we're going to do a study, and I don't disagree that we should, I'd rather end up with a detailed manual that tells us point by point what Texas needs to do to further improve security of our election systems. I think that's better than a generic overview that produces nothing more than subjective conclusions and incremental finger pointing, but that might just be me.
All right.
Questions?
Mm-hmm. Any questions?
Just a question.
Representative Reynolds.
Thank you for your commentary. Now, you are aware from, we passed House Bill 8, which did a study anyway, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and this bill only would add to that, enhance it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So we already are going to do one.
Understand.
Okay.
Trying to build on that.
Got you.
Down in Representative Larson's area is Lackland Air Force Base. In the back of Lackland Air Force Base, behind the Razor concertina wire, is the 91st Network Warfare Squadron. Okay? This is all they do. It's all they do. Okay? And I don't know if it's a U.S. congressman from Texas, a U.S. senator from Texas, or maybe it's the Presidential Commission on Integrity. If we could swing, borrowing time from those people, you'd get the most comprehensive evaluation of our security you could possibly ask for, and it probably wouldn't cost a whole lot. So think about it. Any other questions?
Okay. Thanks, Alan.
Thanks.
All right. We have Keith again, the Secretary of State. And Keith, you want to come on up? I think we got a couple of questions. Okay. Vice Chair.
Keith Ingram here, Secretary of State Elections Division, on House Bill 342.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Keith, thanks for being here. I was wondering if you could refresh our memory that we weren't on the committee where you presented. I think it was Government and Technology during the regular session. Well, I was very impressed to learn about the audits, the fact that those auditors do what Mr. Vera was suggesting. You have hackers come in and try to get into our state system. I know that doesn't speak to our county systems, but I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to that security aspect, because I think that would be helpful to get on the record to say that you've been doing proactive audits that it seemed to me were very impressive.
I don't want to get too much into details about what we do, but the DIR, the Department of Information Resources, has a very comprehensive approach to cybersecurity, especially with regard to state systems, including our statewide voter registration system. And they have an array of services, including passive computer scans as well as active penetration testing. And they give us a detailed list of their findings, and we act on those findings. And so it's a robust program. It's an ongoing program. It's some of it's scheduled, some of it's surprise. So it's not always, you don't always know when it's coming. But that's all with regard to the voter registration database. That doesn't have anything to do with the voting systems of the counties. And what this bill changes is getting us more involved with making sure that the counties. The way I would see this is making sure that they're following our recommendations for security of the systems, because right now we don't have any way to measure that. This would give us that.
Thank you.
Rep. Reynolds.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Keith, can you confirm from the Secretary of State's office that, in fact, there was a cybersecurity threat from Russia with the Dallas County voting machines?
We didn't ever hear from Dallas. The first that we heard about that was in the Dallas Morning News or WFFAA. I don't remember which one it was, but it was in the news that we heard about it. So we didn't know.
Okay, and so obviously this bill would require that information be passed on to the Secretary of State, correct?
It would. I'm not sure exactly what the definition of a cyber attack is. You know, there are passive scans of all government infrastructure all the time. I mean, billions in a year of passive scans. So I don't know if that's kind of shaking the doorknob and seeing if you've got a weakness, but it's not really a cyber attack. But if that's what, we would be overwhelmed with information if we included all of those. So if it's an actual penetration attempt that was somehow noticed by monitors, something more than just a passive scan, then we would be very interested in having that information from the counties.
It would be helpful because ultimately, don't you think, even though it's a county voting machine, with the Secretary of State's office, you oversee all the elections anyway, so you would need that information, correct?
That's right. And in order to fashion best practices for security going forward, we need as much information as we can get.
Okay. And my follow-up question is, just to confirm the information that was given to me, in that the mail-in ballot scanner is on the same software as the InterCivic eSlate voting machine. Is that correct?
So every voting system vendor, if it's a Hart County like Travis or Fort Bend, or if it's an ES&S county like Williamson or Bear, then they will have what they call their tabulation software, and it will take care of both the mail ballots that are usually paper, as well as the electronic accumulation of the flashcards. And so it's all gets accumulated on the same computer. That computer is supposed to have very limited access, and it is not supposed to be connected to the internet. And anytime you put a jump drive in it, it's supposed to be a fresh one.
Okay. And when we passed House Bill 8, that didn't include anything regarding mail-in ballots, correct?
It didn't say it specifically, but we would definitely evaluate the central counting computers that accumulate the mail ballot results, as well as the rest of the voting system software.
But this bill, House Bill 342, would make it very clear that this should be included, correct?
That's right.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, members? All right, thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else who wishes to testify for, against, or on House Bill 342? And seeing none, Chair calls on Rep. Reynolds to close.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're aware, I think, that there's a lot of uncertainty and there's a lot of consternation in regarding the Russian hackers. In fact, the director of the FBI, the former director of the FBI, confirmed that there were confirmed Russian cyber attacks upon our elections. There's no speculation about that. And without getting into any partisan arguments, I believe that the integrity of each ballot, each vote, is fundamental to our republic. And we want to make sure that our elections are very secure. And this would further enhance the study that we currently passed under House Bill 8 to include mail-in ballots as well. So I ask for this committee's favorable consideration to include this language so that when they do roll that out, the Secretary of State's office can receive notice of any type of cyber-related attacks from county voting elections, as well as members of the legislature. And I think that would bring more transparency and more confidence within the election integrity process. Thank you.
Okay, and with that, the chair will leave House Bill, what was that number? 342, thank you, pending at this time. And if there's no further business before us, the House Committee on Elections is now adjourned, subject to the call of the chair. Thank y'all for being here. Good job. All right.